Potaliya Sutta to Potaliya. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living in the country of the Anguttarapans at a town of theirs named Apana. Then when it was morning, the Blessed One dressed, and taking his bowl and outer robe, went into Apana for alms. When he had wandered for alms in Apana and had returned from his alms round, after his meal he went to a certain grove for the day's abiding. Having entered the grove, he sat down at the root of a tree. Potaliya the householder, while walking and wandering for exercise, wearing full dress with parasol and sandals, also went to the grove. And having entered the grove, he went to the Blessed One and exchanged greetings with him. When this courteous and amiable talk was finished, he stood at one side. The Blessed One said to him, "There are seats, householder. Sit down if you like." When this was said, the householder Potaliya thought, "The recluse GOTAMA addresses me as householder, and angry and displeased, he remained silent." A second time, the Blessed One said to him, "There are seats, householder. Sit down if you like." And a second time, the householder Potaliya thought, "The recluse GOTAMA addresses me as householder, and angry and displeased, he remained silent." The third time, the Blessed One said to him, "There are seats, householder. Sit down if you like." When this was said, the householder Potaliya thought, "The recluse GOTAMA addresses me as householder, and angry and displeased." He said to the Blessed One, "Master GOTAMA, it is neither fitting nor proper that you address me as householder." And the Buddha said, "Householder, you have the aspects, marks and signs of a householder." And he said, "Nevertheless, Master GOTAMA, I have given up all my works and cut off all my affairs." "In what way have you given up all your works, householder, and cut off all your affairs?" "Master GOTAMA, I have given up all my wealth, grain, silver and gold to my children as their inheritance. Without advising or admonishing them, I live merely on food and clothing. This is how I have given up all my works and cut off all my affairs." "Householder, the cutting off of affairs as you describe it is one thing, but in the noble one's discipline, the Aryan discipline, the cutting off of affairs is different." What is the cutting off of affairs like in the noble one's discipline, Venerable Sir? It would be good, Venerable Sir, if the Blessed One would teach me the Dhamma, showing what the cutting off of affairs is like in the noble one's discipline. Then listen, householder, and attend closely to what I shall say. "Yes, Venerable Sir," Potaliya the householder replied. The Blessed One said, "Householder, there are 8 things in the noble one's discipline that lead to the cutting off of affairs." "What are the 8? With the support of non-killing of living beings, the killing of living beings is to be abandoned. With the support of taking only what is given, the taking of what is not given is to be abandoned. With the support of truthful speech, false speech is to be abandoned. With the support of unmalicious speech, malicious speech is to be abandoned. With the support of refraining from rapacious greed is to be abandoned. With the support of refraining from spiteful scolding is to be abandoned. With the support of refraining from angry despair is to be abandoned. With the support of arrogance is to be abandoned. These are the 8 things stated in brief, without being expounded in detail, that lead to the cutting off of affairs in the noble one's discipline." Let's stop here for a moment. So the fact that the Buddha mentioned all these things, probably this man, Potaliya, he still has all these blemishes, still killing, still stealing, lying, etc. Venerable Sir, it would be good if, out of compassion, the Blessed One would expound to me in detail these 8 things that lead to the cutting off of affairs in the Blessed One's discipline, which have been stated in brief by the Blessed One, without being expounded in detail. Then listen, householder, and attend closely to what I shall say. "Yes, Venerable Sir," Potaliya the householder replied. The Blessed One said, "With the support of non-killing of living beings, the killing of living beings is to be abandoned." So it was said. And with reference to what was this said, here a noble disciple considers thus, "I am practicing the way to the abandoning and cutting off of those fetters, because of which I might kill living beings. If I were to kill living beings, I would blame myself for doing so. The wise, having investigated, would censure me for doing so. And on the dissolution of the body after death, because of killing living beings, an unhappy destination would be expected. But this killing of living beings is itself a factor and a hindrance. And while pains, vexation and fever might arise through the killing of living beings, there are no pains, vexation and fever in one who abstains from killing living beings. So it is with reference to this that it was said, with the support of non-killing of living beings, the killing of living beings is to be abandoned. Similarly, with the support of taking only what is given, the taking of what is not given is to be abandoned. With the support of truthful speech, false speech is to be abandoned. With the support of unmalicious speech, malicious speech is to be abandoned. With the support of refraining from rapacious greed is to be abandoned. With the support of refraining from spiteful scolding is to be abandoned. With the support of refraining from angry despair is to be abandoned. With the support of non-arrogance, arrogance is to be abandoned. So it was said, and with reference to what was this said, here a noble disciple considers thus, I am practicing the way to the abandoning and cutting off of these factors, because of which I might be all those unwholesome things. In the same way, the Buddha says that if he did all these unwholesome actions, then he would blame himself for doing so, and the wise, having investigated his actions, would also censure him. And then on the dissolution of the body after death, an unhappy destination would be expected. These 8 things that lead to the cutting off affairs in the Noble One's discipline have now been expounded in detail. But the cutting off of affairs in the Noble One's discipline has not yet been achieved entirely and in all ways. And Potaliya asks, Venerable Sir, how is the cutting off of affairs in the Noble One's discipline achieved entirely and in all ways? It would be good, Venerable Sir, if the Blessed One would teach me the Dhamma, showing me how the cutting off of affairs in the Noble One's discipline is achieved entirely and in all ways. Then listen, householder, and attend closely to what I shall say. Yes, Venerable Sir, Potaliya the householder replied. The Blessed One said, Householder, suppose a dog, overcome by hunger and weakness, was waiting by a butcher's shop. Then a skilled butcher or his apprentice would cut out a skeleton of meatless bones smeared with blood and toss it to the dog. What do you think, householder? Would that dog get rid of his hunger and weakness by gnawing such a skeleton of meatless bones smeared with blood? No, Venerable Sir. Why is that? Because that skeleton consisted only of meatless bones smeared with blood. Eventually that dog would reap weariness and disappointment. So too, householder, a noble disciple considers thus. Sensual pleasures have been compared to a skeleton by the Blessed One. They provide much suffering and much despair, while the danger in them is great. Having seen this thus as it actually is with proper wisdom, he avoids the equanimity that is diversified. Based on diversity, he develops the equanimity that is unified. Based on unity, where clinging to the material things of the world utterly cease without remainder. Let's stop here for a moment. This equanimity that is unified refers to the jhanas, one-pointedness of mind through meditation. Then only clinging to the material things of the world can cease. So here the first, this simile of the skeleton of meatless bones smeared with blood. This is a simile for sensual pleasures. So the Buddha says sensual pleasures, when we indulge in it, it's not really satisfying. It's only for a very short time. And then the flames of desire increase more rather than decrease. Second simile. Householder, suppose a vulture or crow or a hawk seized a piece of meat and flew away. And then vultures, crows and hawks flew up and pecked and clawed it. What do you think, householder? If that vulture, crow or hawk does not quickly let go of that piece of meat, wouldn't it incur death or deadly suffering because of that? Yes, Venerable Sir. So too, householder, a noble disciple considers thus. Sensual pleasures have been compared to a piece of meat by the Blessed One. They provide much suffering and much despair, while the danger in them is great. Having seen this thus as it actually is with proper wisdom, clinging to the material things of the world utterly cease without remainder. Third one. Householder, suppose a man took a blazing grass torch and went against the wind. What do you think, householder? If that man does not quickly let go of that blazing grass torch, wouldn't that blazing grass torch burn his hand or his arm or some other part of his body, so that he might incur death or deadly suffering because of that? Yes, noble sir. So too, householder, a noble disciple considers thus. Sensual pleasures have been compared to a grass torch by the Blessed One. They provide much suffering and much despair, while the danger in them is great. Having seen this thus as it actually is with proper wisdom, clinging to the material things of the world utterly ceases without remainder. So fourth one. Householder, suppose there were a charcoal pit deeper than a man's height, full of glowing coals without flame or smoke. Then a man came who wanted to live and not to die, who wanted pleasure and recoiled from pain. And two strong men seized him by both arms and dragged him towards the charcoal pit. What do you think, householder? Would that man twist his body this way and that? Yes, noble sir. Why is that? Because that man knows that if he falls into that charcoal pit, he will incur death or deadly suffering because of that. So too, householder, a noble disciple considers thus. Sensual pleasures have been compared to a charcoal pit by the Blessed One. They provide much suffering and much despair, or the danger in them is great. Having seen this thus as it actually is with proper wisdom, clinging to the material things of the world utterly ceases without remainder. The fifth one. Householder, suppose a man dreamt about lovely parks, lovely groves, lovely meadows and lovely lakes, and on waking up he saw nothing of it. So too, householder, a noble disciple considers thus. Sensual pleasures have been compared to a dream by the Blessed One. They provide much suffering and much despair, while the danger in them is great. Having seen this thus as it actually is with proper wisdom, clinging to the material things of the world utterly ceases without remainder. Householder, suppose a man borrowed goods on loan, a fancy carriage and fine jewelled earrings, and preceded and surrounded by those borrowed goods, he went to the marketplace. Then people, seeing him, would say, Sirs, that is a rich man. That is how the rich enjoy their wealth. Then the owners, whenever they saw him, would take back their things. What do you think, householder? Would that be enough for that man to become dejected? Yes, noble sir. Why is that? Because the owners took back their things. So too, householder, a noble disciple considers thus. Sensual pleasures have been compared to borrowed goods by the Blessed One. They provide much suffering and much despair, while the danger in them is great. Having seen this thus as it actually is with proper wisdom, clinging to material things of the world utterly ceases without remainder. Householder, suppose there were a dense grove, not far from some village or town, within which there was a tree laden with fruit, but none of its fruit had fallen to the ground. Then the man came needing fruit, seeking fruit, wandering in search of fruit. And he entered the grove and saw the tree laden with fruit. Thereupon he thought, This tree is laden with fruit, but none of its fruit has fallen to the ground. I know how to climb a tree, so let me climb this tree, eat as much fruit as I want, and fill my bag. And he did so. Then the second man came needing fruit, seeking fruit, wandering in search of fruit, and taking a sharp axe, he too entered the grove and saw that tree laden with fruit. Thereupon he thought, This tree is laden with fruit, but none of its fruit has fallen to the ground. I do not know how to climb a tree, so let me cut this tree down at its root, eat as much fruit as I want, and fill my bag. And he did so. What do you think, householder? If that first man who had climbed the tree doesn't come down quickly, when the tree falls, wouldn't he break his hand or his foot or some other part of his body, so that he might incur death or deadly suffering because of that? Yes, noble sir. So too, householder, a noble disciple considers thus. Sensual pleasures have been compared to a fruit tree by the Blessed One. They provide much suffering and much despair. All the danger in them is great. Having seen this thus as it actually is with proper wisdom, he avoids the equanimity that is diversified, based on diversity, and develops the equanimity that is unified, based on unity, where clinging to the material things of the world utterly ceases without remainder. This equanimity that is diversified refers to worldly equanimity, and equanimity that is unified refers to the equanimity in jhana, when the mind becomes one-pointed. Having arrived at that same supreme purity of recollection and equanimity, this noble disciple recollects his manifold past lives, that is, one birth, two births, etc. Thus, with the aspects and particulars, he recollects his manifold past lives. Having arrived at that same supreme purity of recollection and equanimity, with the divine eye which is purified and surpasses the human, this noble disciple sees beings passing away and reappearing, and he understands how beings pass on according to their actions or karma. Having arrived at that same supreme purity of recollection and equanimity, by realizing for himself with direct knowledge, this noble disciple here and now enters upon and abides in the deliverance by mind and deliverance by wisdom that are taintless with the destruction of the taints. At this point, householder, the cutting off of affairs in the Noble One's discipline has been achieved entirely and in all ways. What do you think, householder? Do you see in yourself any cutting off of affairs like this? Cutting off of affairs in the Noble One's discipline, when it is achieved entirely and in all ways? And Potaliya answered, Venerable Sir, who am I that I should possess any cutting off of affairs entirely and in all ways like that in the Noble One's discipline? I am far indeed, Venerable Sir, from that cutting off of affairs in the Noble One's discipline, when it has been achieved entirely and in all ways. For, Venerable Sir, though the wanderers of other sects are not thoroughbreds, we imagine that they are thoroughbreds. Though they are not thoroughbreds, we fed them the food of thoroughbreds. Though they are not thoroughbreds, we set them in the place of thoroughbreds. But the monks are thoroughbreds. We imagine that they are not thoroughbreds. Though they are thoroughbreds, we fed them the food of those who are not thoroughbreds. Though they are thoroughbreds, we set them in the place of those who are not thoroughbreds. But now, Venerable Sir, as the wanderers of other sects are not thoroughbreds, we shall understand that they are not thoroughbreds. As they are not thoroughbreds, we shall feed them the food of those who are not thoroughbreds. As they are not thoroughbreds, we shall set them in the place of those who are not thoroughbreds. But as the monks are thoroughbreds, we shall understand that they are thoroughbreds. As they are thoroughbreds, we shall feed them the food of thoroughbreds. As they are thoroughbreds, we shall set them in the place of those who are thoroughbreds. Venerable Sir, the Blessed One has inspired in me love for recluses, confidence in recluses, reverence for recluses. Magnificent Master GOTAMA, magnificent Master GOTAMA. Master GOTAMA has made the Dhamma clear in many ways, as though he were turning upright what had been overthrown, revealing what was hidden, showing the way to one who was lost, or holding up a lamp in the dark for those with eyesight to see forms. I go to Master GOTAMA for refuge, and to the Dhamma, and to the Sangha of monks. From today, let Master GOTAMA remember me as a lay follower who has gone to him for refuge for life. That's the end of the sutta. So here the Buddha says that the cutting off of affairs in the Aryan discipline, that means the renunciant. The renunciant is one who cultivates, practices sila, moral conduct, and then does not enjoy sensual pleasures, and then attains the higher knowledges, the abhinyas, and culminates in liberation by mind and liberation by wisdom. This is thoroughly thorough cutting off of affairs in the Aryan discipline. So the Potaliya had to admit that he has not achieved any of these states, and also he realized that he was, he thought those ascetics of other sects are really thoroughbreds, really proper monks, but now he realizes that the Buddha's disciples are the proper monks.